When your mind expands to a certain point in terms of what you might consider reality to be, other entities live there.
Dr. Gary Nolan is a well-respected microbiologist and geneticist at Stanford. Along with his PhD students, he's spun up multiple companies that have sold for 9 figures.
I look at a problem and I go, the tools that everybody's using are not sharp enough.
With a lab in his name and a corner office, Nolan in many ways embodies a conventionally successful academic. With one big exception, Dr. Gary Nolan is deeply interested in the subject of UFOs, or as the Pentagon likes to call it, unidentified aerial phenomena.
Playing games with your mind like this, frankly, just keeps you sharp.
But what distinguishes Dr. Gary Nolan even more is that he's not just intellectually interested in UFOs.
I mean, I have some in a locked bank account.
He claims to have what may be UFO parts in his possession.
A fisherman saw a glowing object and it just suddenly exploded.
And you'll have to stick around to the end of this episode where we actually see and discuss these UFO parts.
Why isn't the government immediately funding this research?
Maybe the stuff that we have, somebody is sitting around saying laughably, they're wasting their time on exhaust.
Right.
We have the engine.
But before you say, Jesse, what the fuck are you talking about? This is absolutely insane. The story gets even crazier. Just a few years ago, the CIA actually came knocking on Dr. Gary Nolan's door for help.
At first I thought it was a joke. I really did. I was looking across the way here to see if there was a camera.
The agency wanted to see if people who had claimed UFO contact had any neurological and physiological differences. Nolan actually thinks that these particular parts of the basal ganglia, called the caudate nucleus and the putamen, could actually have something to do with people's ability to see and encounter UFOs.
I mean, alien means alien. They're either from another planet in this galaxy or elsewhere, or they're from another level of reality that we don't understand. Or they've been here all along and they just show up to look at us because they're basically maybe looking at their past.
So if you like crazy shit like this and you want more, hit subscribe now. And if you haven't already, unbuckle your brain, lean back, and get ready for this week's American alchemist, Dr. Gary Nolan.
Do you believe aliens exist?
Yeah.
Dog, shut the fuck up.
Of course, yes.
Oh yeah, of course. Could be.
Aliens don't exist.
Yes. I'm an
We know
alien.
nothing.
And they're gone. Woo.
Thanks. I'm here with my friend, Dr. Gary Nolan, here at the Nolan Research Lab at Stanford. Very few people, I think, marry traditional science and the study of anomalous, kind of heterodox subjects like UFOs and aliens. Where did your interest stem from originally?
Somewhere very early on, I started reading science fiction.
Do you have any favorite authors or?
More recently, Ian Banks. And Arthur C. Clarke, obviously amazing.
And Arthur C. Clarke wrote 2001 Space Odyssey, right?
Right.
And I always found interesting, sort of the monolith in 2001 Space Odyssey,
Yeah.
which is this sort of thing placed on Earth that it inspires tech innovation. It's almost like John Mack would talk about a lot of these alien sightings being slightly more advanced but barely comprehensible tech for the time, almost inspiring tech innovation.
I often think of it as laying breadcrumbs in a direction.
What are the areas of microbiology that you're currently most excited about?
So right now, primarily, I would say we're interested in cancer and understanding how cancer is put together. This is a set of robots. You program each station. Science, in its essence, and scientists are capitalists. Most of the biology scientists in the country have some relationship to studying cancer. Why? Because the NCI, the National Cancer Institute, is one of the biggest institutes in the country for doling out money. So you follow the money. And if there's no money for doing this research, and there's no positive feedback for it, and if anything, negative feedback, then the science doesn't advance.
This is a crucial point. Despite the upper echelon of society actually being pretty interested in UFOs, it suffers from a severe lack of resources. Just look at the main UFO program over the last 15 years out of the DoD. It's called ATIP, or the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. ATIP has a $22 million budget. Just compare that to fighter jet budgets, which often exceed $100 billion. In other words, discovering extraterrestrial life and even propulsion that could be stepwise better than what we currently have gets less than 1% of the current F-35 budget.
Eventually we'll get to the point where we can laser beam our consciousness across the cosmos.
Why aren't we there yet?
Right. Funding.
From my point of view, when I got involved, the CIA came to my office. I mean, at first I thought it was a joke. I really did. I was looking across the way here at some of the other offices to see if there was a camera. And so they said, we'd asked around, and everybody said that you've built the best tool called CyTOF. I was introduced to others who were, I think people call them the Invisible College. It was people like Jacques, people like Hal Puthoff, Eric Davis, and Robert Bigelow, and Colm Kelleher. And then they showed me MRIs of some of these people, and most of those people had interactions with UFOs. And these were Department of Defense and intelligence people, so supposedly and reasonably credible individuals. So in looking at the MRIs of some of these people, we noticed an area of the brain that seemed to be disturbed, let's say, or different in many of these individuals. So it's an area that I've talked about before between the head of the caudate and the putamen that had increased neural density. And it was larger in all these individuals. And so you just ask the question, okay, what's unique about these individuals? Well, they're all highly functioning, and you have to make snap decisions. Mayday, mayday! And so what is that? That's intuition. One way to explain it would be intuition, or just highly intelligent. And then surprisingly, when we looked in the family members, we found that the family members had it, which was fascinating. So that means that structure had a genetic component, whatever it was.
Here's a question. Do you have a genetic and phenotypic predisposition to seeing the UFOs? Or post-contact, do you now have a more neuronally dense caudate nucleus and putamen?
No, I don't think that. I don't think it's changed. They're just able to, as you say, see it. They're able to recognize it for what it might be and not dismiss it.
Maybe it's allowing us to kind of widen the doors of our normal limited scope of perception. And you're seeing these UFOs that exist kind of interstitially in reality that other people just can't see.
Our senses are a filter to stop our brains from being overwhelmed with reality. And so what we see is a limited aspect of everything around us.
But that is a different model of reality than people currently have today, but it's one I'm sympathetic to, which is that the sensory organs are not necessarily productive, they're reductive.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, they're reductive.
Yes.
Yeah.
On a default state of almost greater omniscience, but an inability to make sense of things.
I just don't know whether or not it is an antenna or anything like that. It just allows us to interpret things better, right? So, for instance, it's a form of Japanese chess, which is a smaller number of pieces, et cetera. So they took masters in this, set up brainwave to figure out what area of the brain might be involved with intuitive moves, where you basically make the unexpected but brilliant correct move, and at those moments the caudate putamen lit up.
That's interesting.
I find that fascinating, and we're actually working on both and using both autism and schizophrenics, because this area of the brain in both autism and schizophrenia can be damaged. But if you think a little bit about it, schizophrenics hear things and see things that nobody else sees.
Yes.
So are they all crazy?
Well, that goes into the transmission theory. I think schizophrenics it's like a transmitter being broken or oscillating between different frequencies.
Turn it off.
Can't turn it off.
They can't turn it off.
So we went deep on brain structures. The other component of this is materials. I think a lot of people will be incredibly excited that there are even UFO materials that have been possibly left behind.
So Jacques Vallée has collected these kinds of materials from all over the world.
Jacques Vallée is pretty impressive in his own right. He helped develop a computerized map of Mars while at NASA, and he developed one of the early versions of the internet called ARPANET with Doug Engelbart. He's also the inspiration for the French scientist played by Francois Truffaut in Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Jacques was the original person who put forth the multi-dimensional hypothesis, the idea that aliens could coexist alongside us but remain unseen. For this, he received a lot of backlash from other ufologists. In short, he was too weird even for the weirdest. Jacques Vallée publishes his address online so people who witness UFO crashes across the country can send him the parts. But he has no real way of doing analysis on the parts without sending them to a Dr. Gary Nolan who can do spectroscopy and real material analysis on them.
The first question is, well, what was unique about many of these samples? They were ejected from these objects.
One of the most interesting samples Nolan mentions is from Ubatuba, Brazil, where a fisherman witnessed an exploding orb off the coast and collected some of the parts.
And it turned out it was magnesium at an extremely high level of purity, but that's strange because magnesium burns like hell. So obviously it had something else in it. So we did a mass spectrometry analysis of some of those pieces with a highly sensitive instrument. It's over in the engineering department called a NanoSIMS. It's a secondary ion mass spec, as it's called. And basically what it lets you do is determine not just the elements by their mass, but also the isotopes by their mass, right? And one of them was anomalous. The magnesium ratios were way off. I mean, not even close to being natural. It's interesting,
Yeah.
right?
So you would never find this
You would never find it in
naturally
nature.
occur.
You
Yeah.
never find it in nature.
And you'd need some sort of centrifuge or something to create that
Yes.
isotope ratio. Would that be possible?
Oh, it's possible,
But
it's
it's
just
like-
expensive beyond,
Most people don't have access to centrifuges.
especially when these things were found. And the more in question is, why would you do
Why
it?
would you do? What's the motivation?
What's the motivation for it?
Yeah.
Is it something that they're using and they need that ratio to accomplish something? Or is it a byproduct of an effect that where they take the natural things and then they're doing something, and this ends up being the outcome? And then when they're done with it, they go, ugh, and they throw it out, right? Whether or not these objects are trying to show us something or they don't care, we see this happening, and that maybe tells you something. You can sort of reverse engineer from first principles maybe what that is. Nobody that I know has figured it out.
When you
That's
look
all.
at the 5 observables of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, things like transmedium travel, the ability to sort of break conservation of momentum and stop on a dime, are these possibly isotope ratios that unlock these features?
That's what you have to come to a conclusion. It's used in something. Maybe some of these things that we see are not even technological. Maybe they are some kind of living thing.
Well, I remember like Commander David Fravor, the Nimitz sighting 2004, him looking at the UFO, and it's almost as if the thing sees that he's looking at it and is conscious and almost breathing.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Well, if there's look at this thing, it's rotating.
So why isn't the government immediately funding this research? I mean, it feels insane.
You tell me. I mean, maybe they have done it. Maybe the stuff that we have, somebody is sitting around saying laughably, they're wasting their time on exhaust.
Right.
We have the engine. If something came from, the Andromeda Galaxy, and it's a million years ahead of us, it lands on Earth, it has technologies that we don't understand.
Some people think that aliens might be us from the future.
Yeah.
And if you think about the way we're evolving, it's probably smaller bodies, bigger
Yeah.
heads.
Yeah.
Sort of what you would see a gray alien looking like.
Do you think aliens exist?
Fuck yeah.
I saw the light in the sky.
I heard about a friend who got attacked by one.
You know what the most common type of alien is? Light.
Really? Light is an alien.
Is it like laser beams?
They were little gangly creatures, looked like squids, with tentacles.
How'd you know it was a UFO? It was just traveling too fast for normal plane?
It was totally normal, the movement, so it was very, very fast.
I've always been interested in the 5% I don't know. I'll publish the 95% I do know.
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in the stuff that I can't explain, because almost every major discovery has been somebody looking at anomalous data and then constructing a new theory
Yes.
of reality.
Yes.
Right? And that's Thomas Kuhn's structure of scientific revolutions.
Yeah.
The notion that almost every scientific revolution was fought tooth and nail by the more conservative skeptics, saying you can't possibly be right.
And Thomas Kuhn was friends with John Mack, who was
Yeah.
the head of the Harvard Psychiatry Department, who spent the latter part of his career studying alien abductions. Which
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and he encouraged him to do the study.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I'm going to use that in my talks.
you should.
You know, that's, I think, where we're at right now. The preponderance of evidence now, and the Department of Defense admitting that these things are real, that the data is real. Not what there's no conclusions.
Yeah.
The data is real.
The theory maybe I like best is the Jacques Vallée, Diana Pasulka theory that 1947 in the Roswell crash represented this dividing line. And before that, people were seeing angels, demons, leprechauns, fairies, whatever the sort of local
Right.
contemporary lore of where the sighting took place was. And then after aliens became something in the zeitgeist, that's what people started to see. But you're seeing some sort of kind of proto-architecture of
Right.
a thing that involves beings and crafts, and then you're recollecting it in this way that is comprehensible to
Right.
you, given kind of
Right.
like the noble myth or the
Right.
myth of the time.
Right. I use the example of, let's say that there's a race of intelligent ants out in your garden. They don't have a clue what's going on up in the kitchen, right? They couldn't understand it if they wanted to, and neither could you understand what their communications are. How do you talk to them? Well, the first thing you would probably do is make a little thing that looks like an ant
Yeah.
and put it there
Yeah.
and have it do something.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe
Yeah.
that, I mean, alien means alien,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's so far different from us that it's doing its best to talk to us in ways that it can do. They're either from another planet in this galaxy or elsewhere, underground or nearby or whatever, and they just show up to look at us, and because they're basically maybe looking at their past, or they're interdimensional, or they're from another level of reality that we don't understand. All speculation,
Yeah.
but fun.
Yeah.
You can run your mind down those possibilities and realize how much bigger a universe you live in
It's exciting.
than what you're dealing with day to day.
Yes.
To have a group of scientists who are supposed to be leading thinkers debase people who are interested in thinking about new ideas is, to me, that's heretical.
And it feels like it's gotten worse in terms of established scientists. Like, we talk about like the Fermi paradox, which is like the sort of mental model around
Right.
like question of like, well, you know, why don't we see aliens? That's Enrico Fermi. That guy
Yeah.
created the theoretical underpinnings for splitting the atom.
Right.
You know, he was in the Manhattan Project, sort of as conventionally well regarded as it gets.
Right.
And he was thinking about aliens in his off time at Los Alamos.
Right.
So it's like,
When
why
you're-
can't we do that?
When your
Why
mind
don't we
expands to a certain point in terms of what you might consider reality to be, other entities live there.
So this should be a rallying cry to anybody watching on the financing front. Is there any way we can see the materials?
I mean, I have some in a locked bank account. Honestly, I didn't.
You don't
I don't
have it
have it
around?
hanging around here.
Okay, okay.
I could do a video for you and send it.
This is also an easy flight, so I could come back up. Whatever. Is it?
Oh, okay.
Professor Gary Nolan, thanks for having us back. We're here a week later. Very excitingly, we have parts of possible UFO crashes. So what's the background on what we're looking at now?
Okay, the parts were a little anticlimactic and small, but he claims to have much bigger parts that we can't see due to national security sensitivities. But let's just take these three facts combined about the parts that are on the table. Number 1, observers with no real monetary incentive to lie claim to see a vehicle that broke the bounds of our current understanding of aerospace limitations. 2. The materials contain isotope ratios that do not exist naturally on Earth. And number 3, a top Stanford microbiologist isn't ruling out the fact that these parts could be of extraterrestrial origin. Given all that, even though these pieces are small, I think they should get you pretty excited.
And we now know that isotope ratios might have more to do with the properties of the material themselves and the features and what the material can actually do in the physical world than we had previously thought, right?
Right, correct. The odd thing was that the other piece, which supposedly came from the same event, had exactly the correct isotope ratios as to what you would find on Earth. The material up front was what we would say inhomogeneous or partially mixed. It's kind of like if you were to take chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream and then just do a little bit of a swirl, you would see a mixture, and we would call that inhomogeneous. Why would you mix some of these elements?
Yeah.
There's actually, again, no good reason. There's no metal that people normally make that have some of the mixtures that we've seen. That's interesting.
That's worthy of investigation.
Yeah, it's worthy.
So that covers all of the anomalies about the pieces of magnesium coming from Ubatuba. But what about the other sample on the table? Those are pieces of bismuth. Nolan actually couldn't recall how it was procured, so we had to call Hal Puthoff to get the full scoop.
Hal.
Hi, Hal.
Dr. Hal Puthoff has one of the most interesting careers of all time. He was first a laser physicist, and then out of Stanford Research Institute, he started the government's psychic spy program. Since then, he's been doing frontier tech research and has briefed multiple presidents on UFOs.
So do you know the original story of how it was kind of procured initially?
The story was that it was sent anonymously by someone claiming to be an Army officer.
Long story short, this Army officer was going through his grandfather's archives when he found this rare sample.
And then written in the diary was that it was a piece from Roswell.
True or not, these thin layers of bismuth magnesium are very hard to reproduce. Hal claims that they even have the properties to micro-size waveguides for terahertz frequencies.
It turns out that it reduces the size of the required microwave guide for terahertz frequencies down to about 1/30th of the wavelength, which is amazing. So it means you can basically put 30 waveguides in the volume of a single waveguide at terahertz frequencies.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Hal. Really appreciate it. What can you do with terahertz that we can't with current radio?
Well,
it's just more pack in more information.
Pack in more information faster, farther.
Yeah.
Terahertz is the next thing for communication, that if we can get terahertz waves working efficiently, there's a whole slew of other electronic and radio communication things that can be done that can't be done now.
Shouldn't there be things that we're doing with these materials that show what environments they can sort of withstand or what possible properties they have as well?
Yeah.
So like super high velocity, you know, like literally like slingshotting them like as fast as you can, or like putting them in super cold environments or super hot. The transmedium thing, making sure they don't rust underwater, because a lot of the UAPs seem to submerge underwater and then come out of the water. Like basic things like that based on the observables.
You know, I mean, you could run electricity across them, see if anything's different. Are they conductors? Are they insulators? You know, again, this is why I think it's important to get this kind of information out, so that even a skeptic could suggest what should be done. You know, I mean, there's a number of people who have them. I get emails occasionally from people. Actually, there's one that I just got in the last few weeks, an email from somebody who, it's a glowing object that drops molten metal. But
so you haven't seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet. I've just seen pictures of it.
Got it.
So, but it's interesting enough that I'm actually going to follow through on that one.
Yeah. And we should have some sort of standardized process.
Exactly. There's like a flow chart that you could put together of what should be done. And once you've got that process, things just go in one end and come out the other. And then you give it to the true believers and to the skeptics and let them fight with data rather than, you know, hearsay.
Do you think if they're hyper intelligent aliens, they're aware that you're looking into them?
I would
Presumably,
bet.
right?
Presumably, or they don't care,
Yeah,
or they say there's nothing you're going to be able to figure out about this,
yeah,
so we don't care. Or it's left behind almost as a you figure it out and you can have it. You know, the breadcrumb trail.
that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Last question for you. Roswell, 1947. Trinity, that crash was 1945, where the sort of larger piece came from. Do you think that aliens are possibly interested in us splitting the atom? So do you think they're interested in not only nuclear power and our own possibly destruction of ourselves, but figuring out the building blocks of base layer reality? And so when we split the atom, they become more interested, and then maybe they're interested in the fact that we're figuring out our own genetic building blocks as well.
Well, I mean, from their perspective, let's say 1 million years ahead of them, they know that we're maybe a few hundred years from, you know, spreading in our local galactic arm, even if only by conventional craft. Do they want a bunch of angry monkeys running around with bombs? You know, they probably want to keep tabs on us.
Right.
I would.
Right.
You know, I mean, if I've got a neighbor
Yeah.
who is, you know, bristling with armaments
Yeah.
and always cursing and throwing stuff around, I might want to keep tabs on them.
Yeah.
And we're a bunch of angry monkeys right now.
Well, Dr. Nolan, appreciate it. This was
Thank you.
awesome. And I hope we make I hope we go through the step sequence of science that it takes to figure out what the hell these things are and what they do.
If you haven't already, but you like these conversations with highly intelligent yet frontier people working on the things that will define the future, please hit subscribe now. Until next time, I'm Jesse Michaels, and this is American Alchemy.